The auditorium was packed, filled with students, faculty members, and distinguished guests, all eagerly awaiting the keynote address at the annual Success Symposium at Barron Trump's college. It was a prestigious event where top students and faculty members gathered to share wisdom, honor achievements, and inspire the next generation of leaders. Despite being the son of a former U.S. president, Barron Trump had always kept a low profile, choosing to focus on his education and personal ambitions rather than public attention. However, when the announcement came that he would be the keynote speaker at this year's event, speculation began to swirl. Would he talk about politics, business, his personal journey? People whispered as the event began. Many students wondered if he would just deliver a generic, polished speech written by professionals. After all, it wasn't uncommon for famous individuals to do so. Others believed he might reveal something deeply personal, an insight that could reshape their understanding of success. As the event's host took the stage to introduce him, the atmosphere became electric. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to welcome someone who has grown up under the public eye yet carved his own path with determination and resilience. Please give a warm welcome to our keynote speaker, Barron Trump. The applause was polite but curious. Everyone was eager to hear what he had to say. As Barron stepped onto the stage, tall and confident, he took a deep breath, adjusted the microphone, and looked across the sea of expectant faces. Then, with a calm but powerful voice, he began. Success is a word we all chase, but do we truly understand it? The room fell silent, hanging on his every word. Barron Trump paused for a moment, letting his opening question sink in. The auditorium remained eerily silent as the audience leaned forward, eager to absorb every word. Most people believe success is about wealth, power, or fame. But let me ask you this. Have you ever met someone who has all three and is still unhappy? A murmur rippled through the crowd. Many nodded in agreement. Barron smiled slightly and continued. I've had the privilege of meeting world leaders, billionaires, and industry titans. Some of them you would assume are the happiest people in the world. But let me tell you something surprising, many of them aren't. Some of them live in fear of losing what they have. Others have no real friendships. A few don't even know what it means to truly laugh. That's when I realized, success isn't about what you have. It's about what you give, what you create, and the impact you leave behind. A few members of the audience exchanged glances. This wasn't the typical work hard and get rich speech they had expected. Barron took a sip of water before continuing. Let me share a story about someone you probably don't know. Mr. Williams, my high school janitor. The audience listened attentively as Barron recounted how Mr. Williams had always greeted students with a warm smile, encouraged them before their exams, and even stayed late to clean up after events without complaint. He wasn't rich. He wasn't famous. But he was successful. Why? Because he made people's lives better. He was the person everyone admired not because of his money, but because of his character. And guess what? At his retirement ceremony, hundreds of students, teachers, and parents showed up to honor him. That's real success. A wave of reflection washed over the crowd. Barron could see some students nodding, while others sat in quiet contemplation. Then he dropped the question that would change the tone of the night. So, if success isn't about money or fame, what is it really about? Barron Trump let the question linger in the air. The audience, now fully engaged, was deep in thought. He smiled slightly, recognizing their curiosity. I spent years trying to answer this question, and after speaking with people from all walks of life, CEOs, athletes, teachers, artists, and even those who have failed more times than they can count, I discovered something. Success is built on three pillars: purpose, persistence, and people. The room remained silent, eager for him to elaborate. The first pillar is purpose. Without it, success is meaningless. He paced slightly, making eye contact with different sections of the audience. Some people chase money, others chase approval. But the most successful people chase meaning. They do what they love, and they do it with intention. Barron paused and then added, let me ask you something. If tomorrow you had everything you ever wanted, would you be happy? Or would you still feel like something's missing? Many students shifted in their seats, considering the question. If you don't wake up excited about what you're doing, you're not truly successful. You're just existing. I learned this from a friend who started a nonprofit at 19. He had no money, no connections, and no experience. But he had a purpose, helping homeless veterans. Today, he's impacted thousands of lives. Not because he was rich, but because he was driven by something greater than himself. Barron took a step forward, his tone shifting slightly. The second pillar is persistence. I'm going to be honest with you. No matter how talented you are, if you give up the first time you fail, you'll never be successful. The audience nodded. This was a truth they all understood, yet few had mastered. Some of you will face rejection. You'll hear no more times than you can count. People will tell you that your dreams are impossible. But let me tell you something. Failure is just a test to see how badly you want it. He then shared a personal story about how he once failed a major project in school. Instead of quitting, he took the failure as a lesson, worked twice as hard, and later turned that same project into an award-winning initiative. Every great success story is built on failures. If you learn to embrace failure, you'll always find a way forward. Barron took a deep breath before delivering his final point. And the third pillar is people. Success is never a solo journey. He glanced around the room, making sure his words connected with each listener. You can be the smartest, most hardworking person in the world, but if you don't build relationships, you will struggle. Who you surround yourself with matters. He paused and then smiled, recalling a memory. My father once told me something simple but powerful. You become like the 5 people you spend the most time with. And he was right. Barron encouraged the audience to reflect on the company they kept. Were they surrounded by people who lifted them up or those who held them back? If you want to be successful, surround yourself with people who challenge you, support you, and push you to be better. Find mentors. Build friendships with those who dream big. Help others succeed, and they'll help you too. The crowd absorbed his words. Some took notes. Others simply sat in quiet realization. Then Barron asked them, "So, do you know what success really looks like now?" The myth of overnight success. Barron Trump took a step back and observed the audience. He could see the gears turning in their minds. Some nodded in agreement, others seemed deep in thought. That's when he decided to dismantle one of the biggest misconceptions about success. Now that we know success is built on purpose, persistence, and people, let me tell you what it's not about: overnight success. The students chuckled. They had all seen viral stories of young entrepreneurs making millions overnight, athletes rising to fame instantly, and influencers building massive followings in just a few months. But Barron wasn't buying it. We live in a world where social media makes it seem like success happens overnight. You scroll through Instagram and see a 22-year-old driving a Ferrari. You read about a startup that sold for billions in 2 years. And you think, why not me? He let the statement sink in before continuing. But what you don't see is the 10 years of work behind that overnight success. The failures, the sleepless nights, the sacrifices. Let me be clear, real success takes time. There's no shortcut. Barron then shared a story about one of his father's early business ventures that almost collapsed. He detailed how, despite massive setbacks, the project eventually turned into a multi-million-dollar success. Most people would have quit, but success comes to those who refuse to stop. He turned his attention back to the audience. So if you're sitting here thinking success should come easy, I have news for you: it won't. And that's a good thing. Because when you earn success, you appreciate it more. You become stronger. You learn resilience. And that's what separates those who make it from those who don't. The students nodded in agreement. Some even began clapping softly. Let me ask you something, Barron continued. Are you willing to work for it? To fail and keep going? To be patient even when it seems like nothing is happening? The room was quiet. Then, from the back, someone shouted, "Yes!" A few others joined in. Barron smiled. Good, because the only people who fail are the ones who quit too soon. Barron Trump nodded at the enthusiastic response from the audience. He could see the energy building in the room. Now, it was time to talk about one of the most underrated aspects of success, discipline. A lot of people talk about motivation. They say, I'll start when I feel motivated. But let me tell you the truth. Motivation is a lie. Comes and goes. You can't rely on it. The audience listened carefully. This wasn't the kind of advice they usually heard. The people who succeed don't rely on motivation. They rely on discipline. They do what needs to be done, even when they don't feel like it. He paused, then added, let me ask you this. How many of you have started something, maybe a new habit, a goal, or a business idea, and then quit after a few weeks? Hands slowly went up across the room. Barron smiled. It's okay. We've all been there. But if you truly want success, you have to train yourself to work even when you don't feel like it. Barron then shared a personal story about how, during his early years in school, he struggled with public speaking. I hated it. I wanted to avoid it at all costs. But I knew it was something I had to master. So I practiced every day. Even when I was tired. Even when I didn't feel like it. And now, I'm standing here speaking to all of you. A few students smiled, inspired by his journey. Hard work versus smart work. Barron then shifted the focus to another common misconception. Now, some people will tell you, work smarter, not harder. But I say, do both. The audience leaned in. Smart work helps you move in the right direction. But hard work is what gets you there. You can't take shortcuts. You can't hope that things will magically fall into place. Success belongs to those who put in the effort every single day. He pointed at a few students in the front row. If you're an athlete, you don't get better by skipping practice. If you're a student, you don't ace exams without studying. If you're an entrepreneur, you don't build a business by waiting for luck. The crowd erupted in applause. Barron let them cheer for a moment before delivering his final statement on the topic. If you commit to discipline and hard work, I promise you, you'll go farther than 90% of the people who just hope for success. The energy in the room was electric now. Students whispered to each other, excited by what they had just heard. But Barron wasn't done yet. He still had one more powerful lesson to share. Barron Trump looked across the auditorium, his eyes scanning the eager faces of students who were fully engaged. The atmosphere was charged with energy. Now, it was time to talk about the most crucial ingredient in success: mindset. Everything I've talked about, purpose, persistence, people, discipline, and hard work, none of it matters if you don't have the right mindset. He let the statement sink in before continuing. Your mindset is the foundation of everything. It controls how you respond to failure, how you handle pressure, and whether you keep going or give up. Barron paused, then asked, do you know what separates successful people from everyone else? It's not luck. It's not talent. It's resilience, the ability to keep going no matter what. The lesson from a fighter. Barron then shared the story of a boxer he once met, a champion who had won countless matches. I asked him, what's the key to winning in the ring? And he told me something I'll never forget. He said, it's not about how hard you can hit. It's about how many times you can get hit and keep moving forward. The audience nodded in recognition. They had heard similar lessons before, but something about Barron's delivery made it feel fresh, urgent, and personal. Life will hit you. You'll face disappointments. People will doubt you. You'll lose money. You'll fail tests. But if you have the mindset of a fighter, if you refuse to quit, you'll win in the end. The mindset shift that changes everything. Barron then asked the students, how many of you have ever said, I can't do this? Many hands went up. Stop saying that. Right now. Replace I can't with how can I? The audience was silent, absorbing the shift in perspective. Successful people don't say, I can't do this. They ask, how can I make this happen? Instead of seeing obstacles, they look for solutions. Instead of feeling defeated, they get creative. Barron smiled, recalling something his father once told him. My dad always said, the moment you believe something is impossible, you've already lost. But the moment you decide that anything is possible, you've already won. The students were on the edge of their seats now. Some were taking notes. Others simply sat in quiet realization. Your thoughts shape your reality. If you believe you're going to fail, you probably will. But if you believe you're capable of greatness, you'll start acting like it. And that's when success begins. The crowd erupted into applause again, louder this time. Barron let the moment settle before preparing to close his speech with one final, powerful message. As the applause settled, Barron Trump took a deep breath. He knew that what he was about to say would be the most important part of his speech. Everything I've shared with you today, purpose, persistence, people, discipline, mindset, it all leads to one final question. What kind of legacy do you want to leave? The audience went silent. This was different from the usual how to be successful talks they had heard before. Barron continued. Most people spend their whole lives chasing money, fame, and power. But let me tell you something, when you die, none of that matters. What matters is how you made people feel. What matters is how you changed the world, even in the smallest way. The legacy of a teacher. Barron shared the story of a high school teacher who had influenced hundreds of students. This man wasn't a billionaire. He didn't have a fancy car, but he left a legacy through the lives he touched. He helped struggling students believe in themselves. He made kids who felt invisible feel seen. And because of him, many of his students went on to achieve great things. Barron let that thought sink in before asking, so I ask you, when people talk about you one day, what will they say? Will they say you were just another person who chased success for yourself? Or will they say that you made a difference in the lives of others? The question hit deep. Some students shifted uncomfortably in their seats, realizing that success wasn't just about what they could get, but what they could give. The final challenge. Barron stepped forward, looking directly into the audience. You don't have to wait until you're rich or famous to make an impact. You can start today. Success isn't measured by how much you have. It's measured by how much you help others. The greatest people in history weren't just successful, they were significant. He let his words settle, then delivered his final challenge. So, my question to you is this: what will your success story be? And more importantly, how will you use your success to make the world a better place? A hush fell over the room, and then, as if on cue, someone in the back stood up and started clapping. Then another, and another, until, within seconds, the entire auditorium was on its feet, giving Barron a standing ovation. The moment that changed everything. Barron stood there for a moment, taking it all in. He hadn't expected such a reaction. He had simply shared what he believed to be true. But as he looked around, he saw something in the eyes of the students. A spark. For some, this speech had changed everything. As the applause continued, Barron took one final look at the crowd and said, "Thank you. Now go out there and make your success mean something." And with that, he walked off the stage, leaving behind a room full of inspired students who would never look at success the same way again.